this way.
So, that's all budget.
Right.
Didn't know if we did that every year.
Off my ringer here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to call the March 21st Common Council meeting to order. I will ask our clerk to call the roll to determine a quorum.
Alderperson Haas.
Here.
Lysick.
Here.
May.
Here.
Probst.
Excused.
Frankie.
Here.
Rote.
Here.
Vitale.
Here.
Weigel.
Also excused.
Barzak.
And also excused.
Chaplesky.
Here.
7 present, 3 excused.
We do have a quorum. Our Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be led by Alderman Haas. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item D on our agendas, we have 2 items for public hearing this evening. I will ask the clerk to read public hearing number 1.
A hearing on an ordinance to amend sections 12.06 and 12.41 of the revised municipal code relative to defining and permitting alcohol beverage sales, Class A license, as special uses within the C2 through C4 commercial and M1 manufacturing districts.
Mr. Stiebel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this public hearing is to amend our special use ordinance in 2 parts. One is to take liquor stores from a permitted use to a special use, and then also to take the liquor store definition and change it to be more consistent, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Under the current ordinance, liquor stores are permitted as a permitted use. When we get an application in, we just check the box and send it over to the building to get their building permits. They have, as of rights, they have to be able to use that use for what the zoning code provides for. We don't have any decision-making process in the zoning ordinance. However, if we convert it to a special use, that gives the city more local control, and we use a special use whenever we have a potentially problem property that allows the city council to take a closer look at that land mass and to try to accomplish the different things to mitigate any potential disruption to the neighborhood, such as we can do architectural and site and landscaping requirements. We can regulate hours of operation. We can increase or decrease parking requirements. But most importantly, we give us a vehicle to provide public notification to the surrounding neighborhood and to receive public input via a public hearing. And many times in a public hearing, the citizens will give us some ideas that we hadn't thought about, so it's always nice to be able to have that. So in this use, we'd be able to do that with creating a special use. Unfortunately, anything that has been approved prior to this date is still a permitted use, and we can't go back and change the ordinance to make them comply with the new provisions of the ordinance. It's only for future operations. And this applies to all new licenses that come in. It applies to all liquor licenses that are being transferred, but it does not apply to the renewal of existing liquor licenses. On the second part, we're going to change the definition. And our zoning code currently doesn't really define what a liquor store is outside its listing in the permitted uses. What we'll do here is we'll take the state code and the city's health department licensing and kind of combine them so that we're all saying the same thing. And that's the purpose of the second one. The colored areas are all the areas that are C2 through M1 that would allow liquor licenses as a special use if they're approved by the Common Council. The Plan Commission has reviewed this recommendation and has recommended approval, and we've received no objections to date. If you have additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Stiebel. Are there comments or questions from the members of the Common Council?
Mayor Devine.
Alderperson Ranky?
John, under this scenario, would the license fee remain the same then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Yeah, Mayor Devine?
Alderman Haas?
Yeah, and following up on what Alderperson Reinke just asked Mr. Stiebel, so the license fee remains the same. Typically, we charge a special use hearing fee as well. Am I
correct in that? And would that also be required?
Yes. They're still going to pay a special use fee and a site landscaping fee to go through the plan commission. We don't do, it won't affect the license because that's a license and health issue. So it's out of the purview of zoning. So we're just dealing with the zoning issues here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the common council? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the members of the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will close public hearing number 1. I will ask our clerk to read public hearing number 2.
A hearing on the special use permit for Scott's Automotive, an existing auto repair facility seeking to establish an indoor used vehicle dealership at 2042 South 114th Street.
Mr. Stiebel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a special use for a used car dealership inside a building. We allow them also outside as a special use, but there's a substantially different requirements, such as landscaping requirements. However, on the southwest corner of Rogers and 114th Street is this existing building, and in that building they currently have an approved auto repair facility. And this is going to allow them to also have an indoor used car facility, for lack of a better term. It's Scott's Automotive. It's M1, but it's used car dealerships are allowed as a special use, and that's the purpose of this hearing. All vehicles will be stored inside the building, and they'll be sold inside the building, and there will not be any outside display or sales. The hours of operation will be the same hours as the garage, and 32 parking stalls are required, and 88 outside parking stalls are provided. There'll be some additional landscaping requirements along the eastern side of the property line, and that they'll have to comply with. What their goal is to be able to buy older cars, bring them in, fix them up, and then sell them. And then people will come to the site and come inside the building. The Plan Commission has reviewed this and has recommended approval, and we've received no objections to date. If you have any additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Stiebel. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the members of the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will close public hearing number 2. We will now move on to item E on your agendas, which is citizen participation. This is an opportunity for residents to address the council on matters of interest to them. We ask that you keep your comments to approximately 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to address the council under citizen participation this evening?
Hello,
Hello.
Robert Brown, appearing on behalf of the Christian Civil Liberties Union, and for a change, I come here to praise the mayor and the aldermen. I've been going to a lot of these meetings. They're proposing raising the taxpayers' money through the referendum for the school board, you know, $5 million a year and so forth. But during these meetings, Mr. Mayor, one of the aldermen was there and at several of these meetings, and the people get up and they blame the alderman and the mayor for the $20 million they're over budget. It's all your fault, just so you guys know, it's all your fault. It's not their fault. And I've heard this at 2 different meetings by about 3-4 people. So I want to let you know you're not at fault, and whoever says it, well, I won't comment on that. At any rate, there are 46 other school districts that are doing this, by the way, beside West Ellis. Millions and millions of dollars, they've overspent their budgets. They're asking the taxpayers to do it. Some got it for 3 years, 5 years, and I think there's, I thought 8 or 10 have it forever. There's no end to it. They can raise, every year they can come back and say, oh, we overspent our budget. Please give us, you know, $5 million more each year. I bet you guys would like to do that, huh? All right. At any rate, I just want to cover a few quick points about this. Oh, I know, one of the parties responsible for this overspending, I'm sure you heard on the news or in the papers, whatever, they blame him for all the overspending. He invested money, felt these millions of dollars went nowhere, and all the other things he did wrong. Well, guess what? They found another job for him, you guessed it, in Milwaukee in the area of schools. I can't remember, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. It's either MATC or one of the other private type schools down in Milwaukee. So he has no penalties. In other words, you can spend foolishly taxpayers' money, millions of dollars. Who knows if, I'm not gonna say he had any friends involved or what he did. And nothing happened. They refused to prosecute him, they let him go. Goodbye. And he's gone. And yet, some of these people are coming there, I've talked to at these meetings, I'm gonna close with this. And a lot of them wanna vote. They said, well, we gotta take care of these kids and all this and that. It's great to take care of the kids, but some of these programs they got are not really helping the kids. They're so far-fetched from reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's way out of line. It's all these high social development type programs they got on. And I guess the last little thing I want to bring up is at some of these meetings, we heard about how great they take care of kids. Now, you know, I fought them about the bathroom bills, and I couldn't persuade them not to do it. They still think they got a right to do it. I don't want to bring that up tonight, but I thought I'd mention it. And some of the other things that have happened at these schools, I lived near Central High School, and for years, in my alley, I had to chase away, there were needles all over the place, people drinking, having sex, you name it was going on. For a while there, I had to take a 2x4 and actually physically pound it on cars, the drug dealers, to get them out of there. I eventually got in trouble over it.
Mr. Brown, you have 1 minute remaining.
Okay. Well, I thought I'd do you a favor and stop it short. I gotta take my head off. Vince Vitale finally spoke up at the meeting at the library. He wasn't widely received either. I told him when he was walking in here, I said, how's it feel to get on the wrong side? So the meeting's going on where you get little criticism. So anyway, have a good time. I'll stop with that.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to address the council under citizen participation?
I'm Violet Brown. That's my husband. Anyway, I think what happened with this, the board members, it's so easy to use somebody else's money, and what that is called, it's stealing. They stole money. Now, if they worked in a bank and they needed some extra money, they wouldn't go into other people's accounts and take the money. I don't think the police would go along with that. And I think these people should be held accountable. They're not above the law. And they were supposed to be in the interest of the people. Like the Constitution, we the people, by the people, for the people, and they let us down. They should be held accountable, and all the children are gonna suffer for this. And then they said, well, we're gonna put it on the taxpayers. Well, that's not fair. That's again stealing from the taxpayers, and they're the ones that should be held accountable. I mean, they should be ashamed of themselves, taking this and using other people's money and then letting other people suffer about this. And I think that's very, very disturbing. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
My name is Denise Langston. I've spoken to both of you and Mayor Devine, and I have some concerns, and I put together a letter which I've distributed to my neighborhood. And I think that some of them have responded to this, but I would like to read it here now. I would like to bring your attention to a development in our neighborhood. The Old Colony Hall on 58th and Beloit has been granted a Class A liquor license, with the prospective owner planning on opening a convenience store, which will include selling beer and wine. I had initially contacted Alderman Slapluski last week regarding broken windows and boarded up windows in the businesses on Burnham between Beloit and 60th Street. I urged that he contact the owners of these properties to make repairs, helping to slow the blight that has affected our neglected neighborhood. While I had Mr. Slapluski's attention, I asked if there were any developments regarding the Colony Hall at 5801 West Beloit, which has been vacant for some time. He told me that someone had an interest in opening a convenience store, including selling wine and beer. In response to my concern about how that would be extremely destructive to the neighborhood, businesses, and residents, he agreed and said that nothing was final, that an inquiry only had been made. He assured me that if the prospect was seriously considered, all residents within 200 feet of the property would be notified, and at that time a petition from the neighbors to object to the opening of the store could be proposed and would be considered. After continued inquiry, including additional conversations with Alderman Slapluski, Alderman Vince Vitale, who also agreed that the convenience store would have a direct negative impact on the neighborhood, City Attorney Scott Post and Mayor Dan Devine, it has been determined that a liquor license had already been granted to the prospective buyer of 5801 West Beloit Road, contradicting the information I had initially received from Mr. Slapluski. In speaking to the above-mentioned parties, I've received differing and contradictory information, including some claiming lack of knowledge of the licensing procedure and policy. Mr. Scott and Mr. Slapluski gave me contradicting information regarding special permit regulations, how they work, who they apply to, and all had differing information and knowledge regarding the sale and liquor licensing of this property. So contrary to what I was initially told, the liquor license has been granted, with Mr. Slapluski chairing the licensing committee that granted it, without ever questioning whether it would be appropriate for that building or the neighborhood. No concern was displayed regarding the residents of this neighborhood who work to maintain safety and quality of life. No resistance or advocacy from our aldermen was presented, they who were there to serve the best interests of their constituents. Alderman Vitale not only was not an advocate for his aldermanic district, he was unaware that the license had even been granted, stating that the licensing committee does not communicate that to him. So how would a convenience store at this location be destructive to our neighborhood, and how have our elected officials failed us? We live in an area of West Dallas of concentrated blight. Neglect of property by absentee landlords and foreclosed properties, particularly prevalent in this east portion of West Dallas, zip code 53219. Decline of property value. Lack of leadership in prospecting new and beneficial businesses to our area, such as antique, gift shops, bakeries, coffee shops, bike shop, hair salon, dog grooming, etc. Several establishments are already providing cigarettes, alcohol, and convenience items to our neighborhood. These small businesses would be negatively impacted by unnecessary competition. Exceptionally high level of crime already existing at Speedway and the blocks surrounding it. Increase in noise, loud music from cars and people. Increase in parking and constant traffic on our residential streets and in alleys, with cars and trucks entering and leaving this new convenience store using 58th Street, nonstop traffic in our once quiet streets.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Increase in traffic jeopardizing safety of children playing in our neighborhood, as well as those walking dogs or simply out for a walk. Increase in pollution, garbage. The neighborhood garbage already generated by this speedway is huge. Diminished quality of living for the diverse and concerned residents of this historic and changing neighborhood, and a direct blow to the efforts of many residents and business owners who are struggling to improve, not diminish, the quality of life in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood was not notified. We were not considered at all in this matter. We continue to pay taxes and the salaries of these individuals, and they have failed us. So I distributed this to everybody, well, a lot of people in my neighborhood. I think you've heard from a lot of them and will continue to. I'm deeply concerned about what's happening. The windows are still not fixed. There's so much blight in that neighborhood. It's just completely neglected. I've lived there for 12 years. I fought a constant battle from day one, as Mr. Devine knows, and I will continue to speak up and do whatever is possible to prevent any further destruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the council under citizen participation? Okay, seeing none, we will close citizen participation, and we will move on to item F on our agendas. Our standing committees will be meeting during our recess break, and those room numbers are listed on the bottom of your agendas on page 1. Moving on to item G, the mayor's report. I just have one event coming up that I want to remind everybody. Tomorrow night, which is the 22nd of March at 7 o'clock, the West Dallas Youth Commission is going to be holding a candidate forum for the West Dallas West Milwaukee School District School Board candidates. There are 5 people running, and over the past few school board elections, voter turnout has averaged around a measly 13%. So I would like to encourage everybody to try to attend. If you can't attend, this will be broadcast on various media outlets as well. It will be on Ustream, it will be on Time Warner Cable. We are going to record it and be putting it on the city's YouTube channel. It is also going to be on the Youth Commission page and various social media outlets that the city does utilize. The unique thing about this is that these candidates for school board are going to be taking questions from the students that their decisions directly impact. And the kids have been working hard for a couple of months putting these questions together, putting this format together. They did one last night for the state superintendent race. Dr. Lowell Holtz, who is challenging the incumbent Tony Evers, was here, and he spent about an hour plus with the kids answering their questions on the statewide race. So 7 o'clock, City Hall, March 22nd, School Board Candidate Forum. Please spread the word, and if you can view it in person or electronically, please make that effort. Thank you. Concludes the mayor's report. Do we have any reports from the alderpersons tonight?
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Vitale?
Yeah, I would like to address on the fact that I did attend this town hall meeting held in, that meeting was, of course, Congressman from our area here, I even forget his name, God, I don't even, Sensenbrenner, well, I didn't want to say it. But anyway, he did, I mean, the staff that really organized the, before you enter the room, you know, you send up a slip, you send up your name, so if you want to speak, you put your name on that one of the box. So about 6, 7 people, I think, they had the chance to speak out their concerns. So the fact that I didn't really care the way he managed his meetings, he said, I'm holding a gavel. If you have any concern about federal changes or ruling, address that direct to me. But then he got a representative, Joe Sanfilippo, if it's a state issue, just address that to Joe Sanfilippo, which was great. But the only disturbing issue that I had that day, or that from 1 to about 2:24, if a citizen was called to speak, he would have say, if he didn't like what the person, she or he, which most of those people that were over 70 years old in that room, as soon as they say something out of line, the first thing he said, ma'am or sir, you leave this room. And to me, it was not very appropriate in a democratic process. We let him use the Constitution room within the library. I mean, it was his meeting, I do understand that. Then, a gentleman, before people started getting up, he sat on the northwest corner of that room, and he welcomed Congressman Sensenbrenner. So he welcomed him. Then he spoke in favor of Congressman Sensenbrenner, but he addressed the audience. So once he addressed the audience, people started rousing. Based on what he was talking, people that didn't like it. So I raised my hand, says Congressman Sensenbrenner, I says, maybe that person that is talking right now, he should direct the questions to you. I was sitting right there. I mean, I was not loud or anything like that. He says, you can leave this room too, just as well. You know, to me, for somebody that we have in Washington, a person should be really responsible, to me, was unpolite, really. And before you know, he had a police officer, a sergeant, came to the side in case I want to leave. To me, it was totally inappropriate. If I would say something out of line, which I'm not that stupid, to even say that, to me was really ridiculous for him to embarrass some people, not just me, on that floor, on that room, that day, really. I mean, if you want to hold a meeting in West Allen, he better learn or train how to run a meeting in his congressional district. To me, it was inappropriate. It was totally unrealistic for him to do something like that. And I'm very disappointed with this man. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Vitale. Are there any other reports from the alderpersons?
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Lysick.
I move for approval of the minutes of the Common Council regular meeting of March 7th, 2017.
Second.
We have a motion with a second by Alderman Vitale. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no items not referred to committee this evening. No standing committee reports.
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Lysick.
I move that we stand in recess until conclusion of the committee meeting.
Second.
There is a motion with a second by Alderperson Reinke. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are in recess.